Cromwell demanded the surrender of the joint English and Irish garrison. When this was refused, the bombardment began. A breach was made in the town walls, but the first assault was beaten back by the defenders.
Cromwell then sees himself having to take command. He leads the second charge himself. He has to kind of get past the bodies of his friends and colleagues. So he comes in, and we have to imagine him going street by street, house by house even, clearing the town, killing anyone he encounters, which will certainly include civilians.
Almost 3,000 men were slaughtered, virtually the entire garrison, and many after they had surrendered. Cromwell said, "Being in the heat of the action, I forbade them to spare any who were under arms in the town." Any priests found were murdered, and the commander of the garrison, Sir Arthur Ashton, was beaten to death with his own wooden leg.
Several hundred civilians were killed, but the English and Irish defenders were the main targets of execution.
That is done, as Cromwell himself makes clear, by knocking them on the head. That's to say, they're clubbed to death.
He beats their brains out.
He beats their brains out because it saves bullets. You know, you've got a long campaign in front of you. You don't waste bullets.
Here at St. Peter's Church, Cromwell's men set fire to the building. They killed soldiers and civilians alike as they tried to flee the flames. Drogheda was an act of vengeance against English royalists and the Irish, whom Cromwell blamed for the massacre of Protestants. Its military aim was to terrorise other garrisons into abandoning resistance. But a later English politician who would wrestle with the Irish question had no doubt about the nature of Cromwell's legacy.
Said Winston Churchill, "He cut new gulfs between the nations and creeds. Upon us all still lies the curse of Cromwell."
At Wexford, his army committed another massacre, but many garrisons surrendered. Cromwell was back in England by mid-1650, leaving the army under the command of his son-in-law. Guerrilla bands now staged hit-and-run attacks. Cromwell's army responded with ferocity.
The serious loss of life really takes place after Cromwell's departure, much of it induced by the Cromwellian soldiers themselves. They simply destroy the infrastructure of the country. They razed crops, they drove people out of their homes, they burnt down buildings, they deliberately targeted the civilian population in a very systematic way.
The uprooting of populations was a common feature of European war in this period. But what happened next would change Ireland's social order irrevocably. In 1652, Parliament in London passed the Act of Settlement, a radical bill decreeing that the rebel Catholic nobility were to lose their estates and be exiled to the poor regions west of the River Shannon. One of Cromwell's generals came here to the Burren in the west of Ireland, inspected the landscape, and then remarked approvingly, "There is not water enough to drown a man, wood enough to hang one, nor earth enough to bury him." To here and to the fastnesses of Connacht, the Irish nobility were to be banished. In the telling of the Irish story, this is Cromwell's enduring legacy: go to hell or Connacht.